Assalamu alaikum, namaste, sat sri akal, shalom and good day. You are listening to Awaz Community Radio. And today we'll be talking about mental health. Our guest today will be Dr. Sonia Soans. Now, if you want to get in touch with us, give us a call on 0161 839 9817. We're on Facebook. Just type in Awaz Community Radio or tweet us at Awaz Radio 122. You can email your feedback. It's awazcommunityradio@gmail.com. Thank you for tuning in to Awaz Community Radio. Your host for today is Saira, and my guest today is Dr. Sonia Soans. Hi, Sonia.
Hi, Saira.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, you and I met at a conference recently, and we got talking about how it would be great to have you on the radio. So thank you for taking me up on my invite.
You're most welcome. A pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And do you want to tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself?
I've recently just been awarded my doctorate. Been working on mental health, women's mental health, in particular women's addiction at Manchester Metropolitan University. So I've been looking at how Indian women in particular are represented in the media, how that relates to the image and how that contributes to a lot of violence against women. There's an assumption that women who drink or do drugs deserve to be punished in some way or the other. They're either sexually loose, or they have no morals, or they're asking for it. So my thesis challenges that assumption in mental health, which is quite prevalent in our day-to-day life. I'm also a part of the Asylum magazine for democratic psychiatry, where a collective of individuals, users, survivors, psychiatrists, psychologists, people who have an interest in talking about a democratic way of doing psychiatry. Democratic psychiatry was born in post-war Italy, and we're hoping to continue the tradition.
Wow, that sounds really interesting. So it's really important, I guess, to make it clear to our listeners that you're talking about Asylum, and it's a magazine, and it's not in the context of asylum seekers.
No, however, we are often asked about asylum seekers, which is quite interesting because the word asylum had, a common root with asylum seekers and people who were seeking care for mental health issues. We do look at how mental health, or rather mental ill health, is caused by a number of factors. Given the crisis we have today of lots of asylum seekers, migrants, refugees, it wouldn't be wrong to say that they don't have mental health issues. They would have mental health issues. People fleeing war are seeking asylum as a place to stay, but also asylum from the issues they face, the horrors of war and destruction. So in that sense, we have a common solidarity with people who seek asylum. However, our magazine doesn't look at asylum seekers per se.
Okay, thank you for clearing that one up. And can I ask, how did you first get involved with the magazine?
I was introduced to the magazine when I was in India. I was looking at the discourse unit, which is based, it's a lot of members are based in Manchester, and one of the members, Dr. Erica Berman, and had brought in several copies of Asylum magazine to my university, and turning through the pages, I thought, "Ooh, that's interesting. So you can do psychiatry like this. Oh, look, this is written by somebody who's been using psychiatric services for 25 years and has decided to give up medication and meditate. Oh, look, there's another article by somebody writing about the experiences in psychiatric care." I kept flipping through issue after issue, and then I finally did get to Manchester to do my PhD, and I had to get involved with the magazine. So that's how I came to be on the collective.
Fantastic.
Persistence.
So it's really had you hooked from day one.
It has. every issue that comes out is rather gripping. These are stories written by people who have experienced the darker side of the mental health care field. It, these are voices that we don't often hear of when we talk about people who use services. They tend to be figures or numbers. You can never put a face to this, whereas the magazine is determined to put a face to the name, to the institution of psychiatry, which is very fascinating.
Can you explain a little bit more about the meaning of democratic psychiatry? I think you've already touched on that, but if you could just explain that a bit more.
Right. And the movement began in post-war northern Italy. This was a region where there was a lot of socialist movement after the war. Asylums of that era were your quintessential horror movie style places. If you were locked in, you were locked in for life. Nobody listened to you, and the doctors gave you the treatment you wanted. However, the psychiatrists, in collaboration with the patients there, decided to try something new and said, let's ask the patients what they want. Do they want medication? Do they want something else? Do they want walks in the garden, for instance?
Now that must have sounded pretty radical, because there's that saying about the inmates taking over the asylum.
Yes.
That must have been really radical for its time.
It was. This was perhaps the first time, and in its time, that we were listening to what people with mental illness had to say. We were doing what they wanted. We were giving them the treatment they wanted, as opposed to listening and dismissing them, which was quite radical. And it's still very radical. That, if you have diabetes and you say to your doctor, I want a different kind of medication, your doctor would say, okay. Or if you say, I reject medication, I rather treat myself with herbs, the doctor will say, okay. But if you have mental illness and you say, I don't want medication, I would like to try something different, you're not given that option very often. And that's something we're still striving for in the world, around the world today.
So when did you first get interested in the world of psychiatry and mental health?
I was doing a master's in clinical psychology in Bangalore. I came across the term anti-psychiatry. It's very, when you study clinical psychology in university, you don't think of studying anti-psychiatry as a movement. It seems absolutely bizarre and odd. Why would you do that if you want to study psychology? But the more I learned about this, I thought, right. So mental illness is created through certain conditions. Unlike, lots of physical conditions are created through stressors. If you work in a stressful environment, it would affect your heart. Similarly, if you did work in a stressful environment, it would affect the way you think about the world, how you perceive the world. It would give you anxiety and depression. So mental illness doesn't occur randomly. We have created conditions in which those illnesses occur. And if those conditions exist, then how do we talk about those conditions? How do we talk about reducing stressors in our lives? How do we create a better society where people aren't suffering that much? And that's how I got involved with learning more about this movement, more about what users and survivors had to say, because so far it was me looking at what other people did that was odd or bizarre. Whereas this movement said, understand why. Understand that they're a symptom of something a lot deeper that needs to be studied and understood, not shunned and locked away.
So how have you found it working with Asylum in Manchester?
It's been absolutely interesting because I've got to meet very learned people in the last 4 years. you meet people who've come up with, say, how do you talk to your voices if you hear demons in your head? How do you talk back to them? How do you deal with something that distressing without medication, without harming a person? I've met people who've said, look, we are affected by budget cuts, but this is how we're challenging this. People who've said, well, I need medication, but I need it in such and such way, which is absolutely fascinating. I never got any of this in my textbooks. These were real people. You learn so much from them. You learn that human behavior can't be measured. Even though we talk about these conditions as if all depression is alike, it isn't. There are different kinds of depression, and if there are different kinds of depression, then there are different ways of dealing with that depression, and there are people who've tried different methods, and it's fascinating listening to them and listening to how they cope and how they've given that message to other people. How these groups have joined with one another, and that's a means of solidarity for all of them. So it's been absolutely fascinating, and I'm still learning a lot.
It's great to hear someone so passionate about mental health. And what is your view of the mental health provision and the services in Greater Manchester? In the time you've been, is it 4 or 5 years you've been here?
Yes. Unfortunately, I keep hearing heartbreaking stories about cuts. I genuinely love the NHS system. I think it's one of the best services Britain's got. It's the greatest asset the country has. If we lose that, I feel we do a disservice to a lot of people. And I keep hearing stories about, well, because of such and such cuts, we can't treat that many people who then might go on to take their lives because there's nobody there to listen to them. It's absolutely heartbreaking. One death is too many. But we're living under a system where we're fighting budgets. So we could be doing so much more. If we had the money, we could be doing so much more. We could be encouraging people, brilliant doctors, staff, nurses. We could be saving lives. And it's heartbreaking to hear that.
Where would you like mental health provision in Greater Manchester to be in 5-10 years' time? With the work that you're doing with Asylum, what's your vision for the future?
I would like to see more self-help groups, personally. Empower people to talk about mental health. Let them direct what they want. It's not for me to say, well, we have this therapy and that's all we can give you. It's for people to say, well, I run a bipolar support group and we walk in the Lake District every third month. We go on baking courses. Some days we talk to one another. Or we have soteria homes, halfway homes, for people who experience great distress, but they can talk to one another in a similar situation. I want that dialogue. I want those provisions. I want what we have, and I want something new and different. So we enhance what we have, not, break it down further.
So what kind of issues does the magazine look at in terms of mental health?
Oh, that's a very good question. Let me tell you something about the magazine. This is our 30th year in print. And I think it gives me a great pride to be a part of this collective because it's a part of people's life now, 30 years of this magazine, we've covered issues such as women of color and mental health. So we've taken from Bell Hooks' book, Sisters of the Yams, the title she uses, and we've looked at women of color and how they deal with mental health. What are the problems encountered? We've looked at Thomas As, the anti-psychiatrist, his life and he passed away in 2012. So we've got an issue on that. We've got issues on comics and mental health, which was our last year's issue. We had a tremendous response to that. We've had issues on suicide, challenging bipolar disorder, challenging personality disorders. We've had issues on the Mad Pride in Toronto. And it's fascinating to hear all these stories from across the world. So we collect these. I like to think we're curators rather than editors in the hard sense of the term. We're gathering these stories to give to people. What else do? We have a few meetings every now and then where we invite people to discuss issues. Oh, and next year we have a conference in June. Our 30th anniversary. So if you're around, please do attend the conference. It'd be a delight to have Awaz Community Radio with us. What else do? We have a presence on the web. I'll tell you about that later. What else about the magazine? An interesting fact is that when the magazine came out, it was 50p. This was back in 1986, and free to all inmates of any mental health institution. It would be wonderful if we could do that again. We are a voluntary organization, so we're self-funded. But it'd be lovely to do that. We work with an excellent publisher who has an interest in mental health. So it'd be good if we could grow a bit bigger and provide a greater service to people. That's our hope.
So if there are listeners out there who would like to get involved with the magazine in different ways, how can they get in touch with you?
Right. We accept contributions in terms of articles, poetry, artwork, photographs. To get in touch with us, you can go to our website www.asylumonline.net. Our email address would be on the website, but I'll give it to you anyway. It is editors@asylumonline.net, or alternatively, you could find us on Twitter at AsylumNW, and we'd be happy to answer any questions, and we love to hear from people who would like to contribute to our magazine or have excellent suggestions for us. And we'd be looking forward to hearing from people who are listening to this program.
And like you say, it's about keeping that dialogue open, isn't it?
It is. It is essential to have that dialogue in mental health.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Saira, and thank you, Awaz Community Radio.
You've been listening to Awaz Community Radio, talking to Dr. Sonia Soans about Asylum, the magazine for democratic psychiatry. Now, if you want to get in touch with us, our number is 0161 839 9817. We're on Twitter. Just tweet us at Awaz Radio 122 or type into Facebook Awaz Community Radio and you can message us there. Like us, don't forget to do that, of course. Now, thank you for listening. Take care and wishing everybody good mental health.